Hello and welcome to the Dojo, a search marketing news podcast by Exposure Ninja. My name is Dale Davies. I'm the head of marketing at Exposure Ninja, and I'm joined by our CEO, Charlie Marchant. How you doing, Charlie?
Very well, thanks. How are you doing, Dale?
Pretty good. It's been a pretty busy week for me, doing a lot of this and that and whatever. How about yourself?
Nice. It's been, not bad. We just had a massive torrential rain downpour, though, and now I'm slightly concerned that summer is over.
It most definitely is over. I haven't
Oh.
seen the sun for days.
Oh.
Things are a bit different for me up here in Scotland, though, so I don't know. So it's hard to tell, really. But this week we're not here to talk about the weather. We're here to talk about marketing ROI and specifically how, or the reasons why many businesses, let's say medium-sized enterprise businesses, why they might not be seeing the ROI they expected to see by this point in the year. And Charlie, what do you think is probably the number one reason that might be happening?
The number one reason I think is potentially not understanding how your marketing links up to your bottom line goals, or which parts of your marketing are even feeding it. So if your bottom line goal is going to be something like generating a certain number of leads, or if your e-commerce making a certain amount of revenue, then understanding which marketing channels are actually driving those leads or driving that revenue, and then understanding which percentage of your marketing budget is experimental or very brand awareness, top of funnel stuff that you don't expect to be able to directly attribute to that bottom line. Because I think there always will be a percentage of the budget where you can't 100% guarantee that you got leads or sales from it. But actually, there should be a large portion of your marketing that is measurable, where you know that you are generating money for the business, revenue for the business at the end of the day.
Why do you think that it happens that sometimes there is a misalignment between goals from the marketing team and the business's goals?
I think it can be for lots of different reasons. The first, I think, can be because marketing itself can have different goals. So, marketing as a team, as a department, can be thinking about different areas of the business and not just the bottom line. So, they might be thinking about share of voice, they might be thinking about visibility, organic search rankings, social media followings, all of those sorts of progress metrics is what I would call them, or progress markers towards the ultimate goal, which is either going to be sales or conversions. But particularly, I think in businesses that are generating leads, there's also a potential disconnect. And this is the second reason, because there is the marketing team bringing in the leads, but then the sales team are the ones responsible for actually closing that into revenue, closed deals for the business. And so in those cases, there needs to be a really strong feedback loop and joined up thinking. And I think it can be very easy for that to break down. The third reason, I think, is because it can be very difficult to make sure that your reporting is clear and showing what all of the different stakeholders in the business need to see. So when you're speaking to the board or the CEO, they're thinking about the bottom line. They're thinking about where the money's come from, what's making the most money, how much of that money is going to be recurring revenue for the business, the total contract values that are coming in, and how profitable that business is. When you're actually thinking about the marketing person, they're trying to measure things like the quality of the lead that comes through, but not always thinking in the same language or the same goals as senior stakeholders in the business. So making sure that reporting is really clear to all levels of the business. I think those are probably the three main areas I can think of why there's sometimes a bit of a disconnect.
And do you think that, well, obviously the business goal should then cascade down throughout the team, but do you think that the marketing team should push back at any point on some of them and say that actually we believe that, we totally feel that leads is the right measurement, that we're going for performance and trying to get that, and we want to support the sales team. But actually, if we don't dedicate that time to branding and make those our core metrics, our main goals, we're not going to see the year-on-year growth that we're looking for.
100%.
Do you think it needs to push back more?
100%, I think the marketing team should push back, but I think you have to be choosy about when you do push back and what you're pushing back on. So in my head, I like to think of it as 80% of the marketing budget on tangible marketing activities that are perfectly repeatable every week, actually generate some leads or revenue for the business, and you're confident those are the channels that are going to work really well for you. And then you've got a 20% or a bit more budget that is on stuff that's a little bit more intangible. And that might be things you're experimenting with that you don't know are definitely going to work, but you want to know if they could be growth channels. They might be things like brand awareness that's really hard to measure, but really important. And they might be iterations of branding, positioning, that kind of thing that you know are going to filter down to influence how effective all the other marketing channels are, but that are very difficult to directly attribute to revenue coming into the business. So I think the marketing manager, the CMO, whatever their role is, they need to be very confident pushing back that actually that 20% of stuff, they've prioritized and thought about what they want to do with that money to make sure that the marketing is as effective as it can be. Because if you do the same thing forever, you're not going to grow. Like what got you to one stage of growth for a business won't necessarily get you to another. So you want to have things that you repeat in your marketing. So the same way we do this podcast every Friday, the same way we release a video every Monday, things that you know work over time. But then you also want to think about, okay, so next year, what other channels am I looking at? What other kinds of sources are these leads coming from? Will my, whatever it is, my videos, my podcasts, my books, my LinkedIn posts, my Twitter posts still be as interesting and driving as many leads next year as they are this year? Or is there actually another player in here? Is there something else that the business might want to focus on investing in as well? So I think just taking that evolutionary look at things, but also continuing to think about what's bringing leads here and now.
I think that brings me on to maybe the second reason that marketing ROI is often low or just not growing at the rate that people are looking for is it comes down to targeting. Like you might have the right goals, but potentially you're not targeting the right people, the right audience, the right segment. And it doesn't matter what kind of marketing split you have, it's not going to work. And often,
and I think that's all about understanding your customers, but also understanding the audiences you want to grow into as well. We've worked with a lot of businesses over the years who they love their bread and butter customers, but they see themselves growing into a new audience segment. But actually then you need to understand who those people are and what their needs, pain points, moments of like excitement and awe actually are, because it's probably different to the current target customer. And that means that actually things like positioning and brand need to shift in order to start shifting towards a new market. I think there's sometimes like a hope that you just keep the same brand and positioning and then different customer segments also going to love it. And that's probably quite rare that actually happens. Actually, those are the kinds of shifts that marketing has to start pushing forward if they hear from senior stakeholders we're going after a new audience, or we're looking for this kind of growth into a different kind of market, or we're actually starting this new product or service that might not appeal to our current customers, so we need to find a new customer segment for it. Then I think that's where the conversation needs to happen.
So the positioning could be wrong for the new target, but how do you manage retaining what you have as well as repositioning for the new audience or the new segment you want to go after? Do you have to go through wholesale change or navigate it in a different way?
I don't think you always have to go through wholesale change unless you're completely shifting the business. But I think you do need to look at things like the evolution of the way your visuals look, that you have visuals that appeal to those kinds of customers where they recognize themselves within it, that you have sometimes potentially different buyer journeys on the website as well, different customers buying in different ways for you. So you might find out, for example, if you're a SaaS business and you sell a marketing software, you might find that an audience like freelancers, small business owners are more likely to just buy something on a trial immediately. Whereas if you're actually pushing towards medium, large or enterprise end, you might find that actually the sale is worth more. And those people aren't just going to suddenly buy a monthly recurring subscription, because they're thinking about, okay, how many team members do I need in this for the organization? I need to take this to tender with 3 different proposals to the board or to their line manager. It's a much bigger process. They need to be very sold then on that software as the right one. So you're probably going to find that then you need a process of more sophisticated sales funnel, buyer journey, potentially an account manager managing that, someone following up to take it through to a final sale of a repeat subscription. So I think things like that, they touch so many different parts of the business, both the marketing side and the sales side, and then the strategic direction that senior stakeholders are setting for the business. Those kinds of things might need to shift. And then you also might find things like tonal shifts need to happen as well. The type of tone of voice that you're using for certain types of customers compared to others. And that's sometimes because you're looking at different needs and pain points within those personas.
I suppose it comes back to your earlier point of if you're dedicating 20% or a sub percentage of your budget towards exploring a new segment, a new, maybe a new category, whatever it is, if you're releasing a new product or not, you can test all of that out in a very small way of, put the landing page together, and do specific ad targeting just for that audience, and without having to disrupt what to be working with the broader website and your marketing comms. I suppose that there are many other reasons why marketing ROI is low. And have you got any idea of what else it might be?
Well, just going off the back of your one there on targeting and audiences, I think the biggest trap is the everything for everyone trap, like trying to sell and do everything for absolutely everybody, and therefore thinking that have the biggest audience, the biggest potential revenue source, when you actually don't. Because if you don't have some kind of niching within that, people don't feel like what you're selling is really for them, or they get too confused by a broad product and service offering and don't know what they need. It doesn't feel simple. It doesn't feel like an easy decision anymore for that kind of audience. So I think that's one of the biggest traps I often see, is businesses thinking like, we'll just go broader with customer, broader with product and service. And then they actually end up cutting out loads of people because they no longer have that market appeal to a specific type of person. I was listening to an interesting interview of one of the senior marketing people at Finisterre. And for anyone who doesn't know Finisterre, they are like an outdoors apparel company. So they sell outdoor clothing, but they're specifically focused on cold water surfing. So they started here in the UK, down in Cornwall, and that is their unique positioning. And not all of their customers are cold water surfers, but of course many of them are. Compare that to other brands, and you think there's loads of outdoor brands targeting runners, mountain climbers, all sorts of other types of sports, but there are not that many targeting cold water surfing specifically. And then you think about brands like Billabong, who are targeting the sort of more lovely warm weather Australian, Hawaiian bikinis and board shorts type of surf, and they're differentiating their market because they're predominantly UK, but they've expanded significantly, with also going after cold water destinations in the US and other places that have decent surf and swell as well. And that is really a distinctive area. And what they were saying is they had a new head of marketing come in from a larger high street brand, and her advice was, we need to go broader in order to get more sales, drive more revenue growth for the business, appeal to more people, and therefore get more customers. We just need to become mainstream. And as part of that process, they didn't actually see that. What they felt like had happened is they'd become really generic, really boring, and they didn't have any kind of USP or differentiator about what they were doing compared to hundreds of other outdoor apparel brands, because they were no longer focused on that specific niche of cold water surf. And they weren't thinking about those same values that they had in the business, the same way of positioning and targeting and the kinds of things they talk about in their marketing because of it. And they actually just did a whole 180 and went back to what their original positioning was in order to resolve that problem.
That's really fascinating. I can think of like lots of different cases of businesses where they've tried to like expand and it's not really worked out for them, but it can work in some fashion. It just takes a lot longer. Like if you're a Nike, for example, you start off with shoes. Eventually, through just time, you do line extensions and you add new product ranges and things. You kind of, there's Nike SB, for example, which is Nike for skateboarding. That's not something they decided to do in the first 5 years. That was an eventual expansion of what they're doing 20 years, 25 years down the line. Just kind of, you are not going to have complete ownership of the entire market. If you're niche down, you're not going to have 100% of the market. So there's always more to grow into. And it's only when you reach kind of like the maximum growth potential of that you then say, okay, now we can extend into other areas. Like there's Vita Coco, right? That's a coconut brand. But I think it's worldwide. Yeah, really, really nice. They only had like a couple of different products, like maybe just one bottle for the first like 5 years or so. It's only over time they gradually started to expand, and only in recent years have added like a second and third type of coconut water. Like if you go on the website now, they have line extension like testing, as far as I see it. They have it's like mini ready RTD ready to drink coconut water with like strawberry flavor and various other flavors. They're testing it in just one market, see how it does in the US before then expanding it elsewhere as well. And they've also got like coconut water based like shampoos and things like that. Again, like, you know, an extension of who they can cater to.
Yeah.
Because they've reached they haven't really reached the maximum potential of growth in the main category, like coconut water, but they're kind of the dominant player there. There's not really a lot of room to grow. You can convince people who would normally drink orange juice to drink that instead. That takes a lot of time. So why not just experiment with one new product line, see if you can expand in that area into a whole new category rather than just a 1% increase there. So you can do it, but don't at the cost of your main category, your main product line. Don't just
and the question is
change
like
everything.
At what point you accelerate and into what markets you actually accelerate as well. It's going to be really hard for a sportswear brand, for example, to suddenly just become everything for everyone when you've got so many dominant competitors, just like Mike and Adidas and Gymshark and all of those types of companies already out there. You do need to do something a bit interesting, but different to actually grow your name to begin with. Whereas in your example there, like there are not many people specifically focusing on coconut water. And I would say even coconut-based products is a fairly niche market still.
Yeah, I do believe it is entirely possible to completely change your positioning and go like for a much broader market, but the data suggests that to do so, you need a huge amount of marketing budget to make it happen. So you want to increase your share, your share of market, your share of voice. You've got to overspend what everybody else is doing to make up for it. There's something called excess share of voice, which I'd recommend you go and research after you finish listening to us this week. It basically says that in order to grow your share of market, you need to have far over overspend what all of your competitors are doing in order to kind of reduce their effectiveness in order to grow your category. So, a Nike to reach, a new, like a Gymshark, for example, they've gone for a very specific segmentation, but for a particular audience. But to expand beyond that to become a global brand, you have to spend a lot of money to get the brand out there, and at the same time try and make those units being bought. I can't think of what the actual thing is called. Shorts and t-shirts and things like that. But you want the unit to be purchased. You want the basket to be complete and checkout to be completed. But you have to spend big on brand to make sure people are aware of you in the first place, and then we'll pick something up. And that's not something that everybody could do. So, as I said, bit of segmentation, just focusing on that, seeing if you can grow that way rather than messing with the main kind of thing. But I suppose that means brings on to another reason the marketing ROI could be low, is that your channel mix might not actually suit who you're after, or might not even suit your positioning and suit your offering.
Yeah, and this is kind of what we were talking about at the beginning with what actually drives revenue for the business as well, and understanding how many leads or how much bottom line revenue each marketing channel brings. And that can be really difficult for marketers to measure, because quite often we're using last click attribution, which means which was the channel that got the conversion or the purchase over the line. So if the last thing they did was click one of your emails and then made a purchase directly from there, it's attributed to email marketing. But that person could have first seen the brand on social media. They could have later clicked a Google ad. They could have later done some organic searches on Google. They could later have spoken to ChatGPT. Before then, they actually made a purchase through the email. So understanding that whole attribution for the majority of your customers is important as well, so that you know which channels are actually contributing to it. And then you can see which ones perhaps aren't. And when you're thinking about, okay, which channels are just not driving anything here, there's, I think, two questions. And the first one is this a growth channel? Are we seeing progress over time? Do we think it's worth dropping 3 months of budget in here to see if this is going to progress and become a useful channel for us? Or is it driving nothing? Have you already dropped a certain amount of marketing investment in there and nothing is happening from it? In which case, are you flogging a dead horse? Is it time to let it go and cut it off and use the budget for something else in the marketing mix?
Again, it comes back to something you were talking about earlier in terms of leading and lagging metrics of, okay, it's just building our brand awareness, but is that necessarily leading to the lagging factor of the conversion later on or the sale later on? It is kind of tricky to measure that. There are like emerging, or I say emerging, they're fairly well established at this point, ways of doing so. There are lots of different analytics platforms. There's also media mix modeling as well now, which is very useful for like omni-channel. So it just like figures out, or tries to figure out, using complicated mathematics I'm never going to understand. Like, yes, it touched these various points and the conversion came at the end. You can figure out better then. But often you can do something as simple as just asking people where the conversion has come from and where they found us. Like in our HubSpot. So we use HubSpot. We're a HubSpot partner. And if you're kind of keen to understand what that means and the kind of potential there is in that platform, come and speak to us, because we've got such a cracking team when it comes to like HubSpot setup. Incredible. They set up ours as well. So I can see through self-attribution and tracking how people found the site, but how they actually found us as well. So I asked them in our free website marketing review form. If you don't know what that is, go over to explosionninja.com/review and request a review of your business. We'll have a look at your marketing and everything and let you know what opportunities you have. But in that form, we ask people, how did you find out about it? So in there, when I get the final results in the CRM in HubSpot, it tells me how the person says they found us versus what the tracking software says. So it might say in a tracking software, organic, but then their self-attribution is via your videos or via your YouTube channel. So I know that they've first discovered us via YouTube, then searched for Exposure Ninja or Exposure Ninja Review or whatever it is, and then come through that way as well. So you know that, right, I know that our videos are working, but I know that our organic is working in some fashion as well. So there is some setup you can pick that will help you to understand like which channels are working for you. And then that will help you to decide, right, I need to put all of my eggs in this basket or spread them out and improve your ROI that way.
Yeah. And I think the other trap here, though, becomes spreading yourself too thin and trying to do all the marketing activities. So that's like the equivalent I always think of, like you bet on every horse. So you put £1 on all of them and then you basically get nothing back. You've lost money because the winnings for the one horse where you only had £1 on it, but you spent 9 other pounds as well. You can't actually get a good outcome from spreading too thin because you've not been able to successfully test everything. So you can't test everything all at once, all of the time, and expect to see progress from it. And I think that's a big trap, especially for businesses trying to scale, of being like, well, I feel like I've put a bit of budget into everything and nothing's really giving me anything back. You do actually need to pick a couple of horses that you're definitely going with and work hard on them and find a repeatable process that's going to bring revenue into the business.
It's a common thing to happen where you're going into a new year, you need a brand new strategy, and you think, right, I've reached this level, I need to go beyond that. Can I spend more on this? Or I could just spend on this brand new channel because I just have a gut feel that's the right thing to do, or that's what everyone's talking about right now. I'll try that out, and it's not actually right for you. And it goes back to your earlier point of the wrong targeting and not really understanding your customer might be the cause of a bad channel mix decision. You might love video as much as we do, but your customer might not spend any time on videos whatsoever. So as fun as it might be to do videos, or a lot of people might be recommending it to you generally, it might not suit your audience at all. And that's why you end up with a zero return.
And I think that's where you can, I don't love thinking about only best practice, but I think that's where best practice helps, because you can understand the demographics of who are the majority of users of certain platforms. If you know you're targeting Gen Z, you're going to be on TikTok. If you know that you're targeting people above 50, you don't need to be on TikTok because they're probably not using it for the most part. There's always anomalies, and I think it's really important not to be distracted by those anomalies. The same if you know that you are targeting procurement officers and C-suite level people who actually still have to go into the office and commute to work. They're probably listening to podcasts. They probably don't have as much time to be scrolling social media. They're probably driving, they're probably on the train to London, whatever it is. And I think thinking in those kinds of terms about what is your target customer doing in their free time and on their work time when it comes to marketing channels is a good place to start, so that you're not just trying to do all channels, because that's going to become incredibly overwhelming for the marketing manager, and it's going to become incredibly difficult to then be reporting up to senior stakeholders in the business or a board why you're doing those and why the progress on those channels isn't anything significant.
Yeah, it seems like it's very easy to pick up brand new tactics and just be like, yeah, I'm going to give it a try. Like, I'm going to just do that because that's the flavor of the week. And I feel like that sounds exciting to me. I'm going to give it a shot.
Yeah.
But being conscious of time, are there any other like big reasons why you think that a marketing manager, a marketing leader might be seeing a low ROI from their marketing that might be an easy fix, or is a hard fix, but could be a huge, could really turn things around?
I actually think there's the exact opposite problem to what we've been talking about here. So the experimenting with everything and achieving nothing, but also the polar opposite end of that scale is the experimenting with nothing and therefore achieving nothing, because you have become so risk averse that you just want to continue doing what you've always done. And I think times change, businesses change, customer needs evolve, product and services should be evolving and developing as well in the business you're working for. The idea that marketing is going to be entirely static and that nothing will change is a very risky place to be, because that might be great in the very short term. You might be able to repeat things that bring similar types of customers, but you're probably going to find that it starts to stagnate. And I think the example right now that everyone is talking about, of course, is that AI search, ChatGPT, is growing. The majority of businesses are still thinking about Google and Google search. And if you're not thinking about that little bit of experimentation, at least in the business, and you're currently just thinking about, we're just going to do the same, we're just going to do exactly the same thing. We don't want to spend any of our budget on experimenting. You are going to find that you fall behind, or you're going to find that eventually some channels don't perform as well for you as they used to, but then you don't have any kinds of experiments running to know what the next thing you might be prioritizing doing actually is. And that leaves you in a right pickle when you do find that channel really declining. And I think in a lot of businesses, that marketing ROI, that tends to be a really slow decline. So it can be difficult to originally notice what's actually happening. And that often is going to be shifts in audience preferences, in how they actually use things, people moving over to searching on LLMs and not just Google. People used to love Instagram, but now they spend a lot more time on TikTok and YouTube. Those kinds of shifts that just naturally happen. You as a marketing manager need to be so on top of those. And you need to have, I think, that little bit of risky edge to be experimenting with something as well, whilst being sensible enough to keep something else running consistently at the same time. It's a really difficult job, because you've got to manage both of those things, both a bit of marketing innovation, but also stability and consistency for the revenue that you're driving in your function as well.
Yeah, I do love a bit of experimentation when it comes to marketing. I do like to, have a play with new tactics, new tools, new channels, especially. I think are really exciting. But just on the AI search point, I did see a recent study from SparkToro and Datos, which is a SEMrush company, talking about how Google searches are actually going up very slightly for some audiences. So, the average number of searches for power users has gone up from like 10 searches per day to 13. I don't know who these people are who are on Google 10, 13 times a day, but all power to you. But those people are also using LLMs as well.
Yeah.
And what's happening is that they're using ChatGPT and Claude and various other platforms. They're using it, beforehand 3 or 4 or 5 times and then going to Google. And the reason why some businesses are seeing a declining organic traffic isn't necessarily that people are going to AI search platforms instead. They're using them as well. They're going to Google to complete more of towards the middle of the bottom of the funnel, but that so much more of that is zero click that it's just not translating into traffic on the website. And that's why the marketing ROI for organic is appearing low for some businesses, for some sectors, many sectors in fact. It's not necessarily because SEO is not performing like it used to. It still is. You're still appearing. It's just that funnel, as you've often put it, is condensed and absorbed by Google's ability to just answer so much more within the search results.
Yeah. And again, this comes down to the attribution of, did someone have a touch point with organic before they purchased? Because those metrics that are things like clicks and organic traffic, for example, are not necessarily supporting the final ROI. They are just progress markers that we've always used, and they're becoming more difficult to use with the increase that we are seeing with AI searches going on, which is why actually being able to connect these things together is incredibly important for understanding how you actually scale the return on your investment from your marketing as well.
Yeah, the one thing we've kind of touched upon throughout this is just having the right metrics. There are some new metrics emerging for AI search. Are there not, Charlie?
There are lots of new metrics emerging for AI search, I would say. Ultimately, at the end of the day, the most important metrics I always think are the traffic you've got to your website, but even more importantly, the conversions and where they're coming from. And I think the simplest way to do that is to check the last click attribution, which you can do in your Google Analytics 4. You can separate out your AI search traffic so that you can see how much traffic is coming from LLMs and how many conversions are coming from those LLMs as well, and how that's growing over time. That's the simplest and closest way to your bottom line to actually see what's coming from AI. The other type of emerging metrics that we're seeing things like visibility in prompts relating to your business, your product, your service, which is great, sort of similar to what we would think of as keyword visibility. We are starting to see metrics that are similar to keyword search volumes or visibility volumes, prompt search volumes. At the moment, those are using the same kinds of keyword metrics that we're seeing in Google. So we don't have any specific separate way to see all of the words, the keywords, the prompts that get searched on ChatGPT. It's almost an amalgamation of data that these tools are using to predict roughly how many people are prompting LLMs with something similar to a certain keyword or topic. And then there's things like share of voice, how well you're showing up in AI compared to your competitors, what percentage of that share of voice you're getting across LLMs compared to your competitors. And probably the last one is sentiment, just the positive and negative sentiment about you and your business and how AIs describe you as well.
Do you know, I'm really loving these emerging metrics. They're quite fun. I was doing a bit of research for somebody who's reached out to us to potentially support them with their marketing at the moment, and just dropping them into one of our AI search tracking platforms and just measuring their visibility against their competitors and seeing like what their sentiment looks like. How not only how often are they mentioned in the prompts that we've decided to track it for them, just seeing where they come in that list. Is it the first brand mentioned? Are they the third brand mentioned? Is the sentiment positive or negative? Do they mention price? Is that like a blocker within the LLM before you even get to that final search on Google, presumably, or Bing or Yahoo, depending on where you are in the world? Absolutely fascinating. And there is actually a video on our YouTube channel. So if you go to youtube.com/exposure ninja, the last 2 or 3 videos are touching upon these subjects, including one about the metrics to measure for AI search optimization as well. So I'd highly recommend going and watching that. Any final thoughts, Charlie, to share this week before we end?
I would say, just if you're thinking about your marketing ROI and you're feeling like it's a little bit low, sometimes getting a second opinion on it can be really helpful. Gives you new ideas, a fresh perspective on what you're doing, or gives you a couple of leads for paths you might want to follow if you're feeling a bit stuck. So you can always get in contact with one of our team at exposureninja.com, or you can find myself or Dale on LinkedIn, and we're always happy to give our thoughts as well. if you are about to do a bit of a deep dive into why your ROI isn't as strong as you want it to be, I would think about goals, targeting, positioning, offering, your channel mix, and then what you're actually measuring.
Absolutely superb. Right, if you are looking for more marketing advice and you haven't yet gone to exposureninja.com/review to request a review, you can go to our YouTube channel, so youtube.com/exposureninja, as well as our podcast. You can find hundreds of episodes over at exposureninja.com/podcast, as well as more blogs that I can keep up with, exposureninja.com/blog 2. And we'll see you all next week, where I believe we should be, fingers crossed, starting this year's marketing strategy series, where we'll be talking about marketing, how to create your own marketing strategy, how to create digital marketing strategy, specifically how to do a brand strategy because of the importance of it with AI search, and SEO strategy. We're going to cover as much as we can throughout the next couple of months to make sure you've got everything that you need to go into 2026 with confidence that your marketing ROI is going to be high as it possibly can be. So join us next week, where fingers crossed we'll be kicking off that series. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you all then. Bye.
Bye.